It's all yours, sir. Thank you.
All right, so good morning once again. Anthony Swingruber here. I will be presenting first on performance measurements and how that ties into your requirements for progress reporting to the commission. And then we'll dive a little deeper into how to make your performance measures higher quality. I'm a little reluctant to go last here because I always feel like this is kind of a dry topic, but it's very important for establishing a foundation for your the effectiveness of your program's intervention. And I imagine most of you all are involved in some level already in measuring the performance of your programs, but that could vary from program director to program director, depending on how long you've been with your organization or working on your organization's AmeriCorps initiative. For the purposes of this presentation, it's intended to be a AmeriCorps 101. So we'll just look at it from the perspective of someone that's coming in brand new and considering how to implement performance measurement into their program. And hopefully we'll answer these questions by the end of this session, this first session. What is performance measurement? What is the purpose of performance measurement? And how can it be used in program management? What does AmeriCorps expect to achieve through performance measurement? How does AmeriCorps approach performance measurement? And how will performance measurement be used going forward? And for AmeriCorps New York, that will be your biannual progress reports, which I'll go over the schedule for that. And in fact, we have a reporting period ending at the end of this month. So we'll talk a little bit about that at the end. And at the end of this session, hopefully you can describe what performance measurement is, how it can be useful, how AmeriCorps approaches performance measurement, and how it's used to tell the national service story. So what is performance measurement? I imagine most or all of you already know what this is. If you're already engaging in performance measurement with your AmeriCorps program. But just the simple definition here, it's the ongoing systematic process of tracking your program's outputs and outcomes. Outputs measure the completion of activities and document the fact that individuals receive services, products were created, or programs were developed. They answer the question, how much service did we perform or what products did we develop? However, they do not answer the question, what changed as a result of the service provided or product developed? And that would be that second question more in relation to outcomes, which we see here. Outcomes reflect the changes or benefits that occur as a result of the service. They can reflect changes in individuals, organizations, communities, or the environment. They address changes in attitudes and beliefs, knowledge and skills, behavior, or conditions. For example, changes within an organization may include an enhanced system to better serve community members. Outcomes answer the question, what difference did our service make for beneficiaries? Or how did the new system or product enhance the capacity of our organization to serve the community? So the most compelling outcomes generally address changes in behavior or conditions. One thing to keep in mind is that what makes a change compelling is not just the type of change, but the magnitude or the amount of change. And the change should reflect the activity's intended purpose. So thinking about your theory of change and your intervention, so that change in your beneficiary should be reflected in your program model. In summary, performance measurement can show whether a change occurred. To find out whether the change occurred because of the intervention, you would use other approaches. And this is a reference to program evaluation, which that can sometimes be confused with performance measurement. Evaluation is taking your performance measure data and often comparing it to a control group And that way you can tell if the change occurred because of your intervention, whereas performance measurement doesn't necessarily accomplish that. So we'll talk a little bit about the types of outcomes we might see, starting with this table here. This one focuses on changes in attitude or belief, knowledge or skill, behavior or condition. Outcomes regarding attitude and belief involve a change in thought or feeling. For example, you can think of a primary caregiver who feels she has more social support after receiving respite services. Outcomes measuring knowledge and skill involve a change in understanding or ability. An example of this would be what a person learns. And that could be a student that improves reading ability or attending after attending tutoring sessions. The third type of outcome addresses behavior and can involve changes in actions such as conduct or habits, and it could be in a specific context. An example here would be a student that improves their class participation, and that's according to the reporting from teachers after the student participates in a school mentoring program. Lastly, outcomes regarding condition. This is going to involve a change in situation or circumstance. As I mentioned before, this can be one of the more compelling types of outcomes. An example here would be a family that transitions into safe and affordable housing after receiving referrals and counseling. Another example, a community receives a new after-school program because a youth organization has been able to build the organization's capacity to provide services. So now we'll explore examples of the different types of outcomes within some of AmeriCorps' focus areas. And you may recall from the very first presentation, there are 6 focus areas that AmeriCorps aims to make an impact in. So for the area of education, as we see here, an example of a change in attitude or belief would be an increased interest in school. A change in knowledge or skill would be improved math ability. A change in behavior, that might be increased school attendance. And then finally, a change in condition, we can think of that as successful completion of high school in this example. Now we'll look at outcome examples for healthy futures. An example of change in attitude, that could be an increased desire to adopt good nutrition habits. A change in knowledge or skill in the healthy futures focus areas would be the ability to prepare healthy meals on a small budget. A change in behavior could be increased health food intake. And lastly, a change in condition, that might be improved household food security. So we've looked at examples within 2 of 6 focus areas, education and health. Pop quiz, what are the 4 other AmeriCorps focus areas? Just so I know that you're still with me early on, if you want to put that in the chat. So we've looked at outcome examples for education and health. What are the 4 other AmeriCorps focus areas? Are you able to see, Eric, if we're having anyone respond here to the question? What are the 4 other focus areas outside of
Environmental
education and health?
stewardship is one. Community wellness, economic opportunities. Good job, folks. Veteran and military families, disaster services, economic
We hit them.
opportunities, environmental.
Yep.
Wow. Good job.
All right. And there'll be some WebEx checks in a second here, the pop quizzes. So let's take a look at a 7th type of performance measure. It's not actually considered one of the 6 key areas for AmeriCorps programming, but you will find it listed in AmeriCorps' performance measure instructions. That one is capacity building. Capacity building is considered a set of activities that expand the scale, reach, efficiency, or effectiveness of programs and organizations. usually by leveraging resources. So you can think of this as increased fundraising for an organization, more access to volunteers, increased in-kind support. These would all be examples of capacity building for an organization. A specific example would be AmeriCorps members that implement a new training curriculum for community volunteers that are wanting to help out in the event of a disaster. Another example might be AmeriCorps members organizing regular fundraising events for an organization's after-school program. And then as a result of these events, the organization receives an increase in resources, such as donations or increase in the number of volunteers serving with the organization. And that in turn allows the organization to expand its after-school services to new locations. AmeriCorps members, another one would be members helping organize or helping organizations to develop partnerships with other service providers that work with the same populations with the goal of improving efficiency of services as measured by reduced wait time and cost for clients. So now we'll look at how performance measurement helps for program management and review some of the national performance measures that AmeriCorps programs use. Here's our first learning exercise. I'll get this going in the, let's see, I think, I don't know if you might have to do this for me, Eric. While I'm in present mode, it looks a little different for me.
Um,
Let's see, I'm looking for polling. So yeah, Eric, if you go into polling and then the final session, there'll be a series of polls.
all right, give me 1 second here.
Oh, you know what? I think I'm able to do it on my end.
Okay.
So I thought it was going to be
You have
pretty
any
straight.
info?
I thought it was going to be pretty straightforward, but I'm noticing like when I'm in present mode, that's
Yes.
so I have to get out of present mode basically.
Yes.
For bearing with this, folks.
I can do it if you want, Anthony.
Yeah, if you don't mind, go ahead.
It's under final.
Yeah, while Eric gets that up, I'll just read it on the slide here. Outputs are the amount of service provided. What might that include? Select all that apply. And there's the question there. And you can put that in the chat. Yeah, Eric, when I bring up polling, it's just completely blacked out for me, so I can't. When I was demoing this myself, I was able to put up the poll.
I'm not seeing the poll question in the documents folder for WebEx.
Okay, so I think, you know what, let's just put let's have some
Okay.
brave PDs put it right in the chat, and we'll just keep things moving.
Excellent.
So outputs are the amount of service provided. What might that include? Select all that apply.
Should I start announcing some of the answers in the chat, Anthony, or you want to give people?
Yeah. Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, I see a lot of people, or I see a few people say A, C, and D. One mentioned A, just A only.
A, C, and D is the correct answer. Just to keep moving here. Yeah, so when we're talking about outputs, number of people served, number of products created, number of programs developed. Of course, this doesn't talk about what resulted as a result of the intervention, just countable items. Grant dollars spent, not so much. That's not going to have anything to do with your intervention. But if it was a capacity building performance measure, you could count the number of new fundraising generated. That could certainly be an output, but in this example, number of grant dollars spent would not be one of the outputs. Outcomes are changes that occur. This may include which of the following. Select all that apply. And if you want to let me know, Eric, what answers you're seeing.
Nothing yet. Oh, I see A, B, D, and E.
That is correct.
Everything except for C. Yep. A, B, D, and E. Yep. All right. Good job, everyone.
Yeah, so of course, number of individuals assisted, that was in the previous slide. That's going to be an output. And the other 4 examples are examples of changes that resulted from the intervention. The following statement is an example of what type of outcome. Youth who have never volunteered before serve at an organization of their choice for at least 30 hours over the summer.
Nothing yet.
What is this an example? What type of outcome?
I'm seeing C in the chat. A, B, and C, C. Lots of
Yep.
one
Yeah,
person
and
mentioned
that
B.
one's this one would be C instead of B because we're talking about youth that previously they had never engaged in volunteerism, and now they are, as a result of the program intervention, they are now volunteering with the organization, and not just volunteering, but doing so for at least 30 hours over the summer. And that would be where data tracking becomes important, which we'll talk about later. But that is a change in behavior as opposed to the other 3 options. And lastly, did you have a question, Eric?
Yeah, one person thought that maybe it might have been A as well.
Yeah, it could be as long as there's some sort of instrument that is assessing their attitude towards service. A program wouldn't be able to necessarily make the determination that their attitude towards service has changed. It kind of goes hand in hand. In this case, if you're just counting volunteer hours, the behavior would be the more apt outcome to consider. But then if you had a survey that was assessing their attitudes towards volunteerism, and you could show some change over when you survey them before the intervention and then afterwards, then you could potentially identify A as an outcome. The following statement is an example of what type of outcome. A community health clinic expands its service hours from 40 to 48 hours per week due to increased volunteer support. What example of an outcome would this be?
Seeing D's.
Yep, absolutely right.
Good job, everyone.
In this case, yeah, the health clinic now has an expanded capacity to be able to provide service, and that clearly is a change in the condition of the operations of the health clinic. Okay, so now we get into the reason why we do performance measurement, and one of the reasons is accountability. It's going to satisfy the need of funders and stakeholders, and that includes AmeriCorps members. It could be board members, community members, your program staff, and the clients that you all serve. It satisfies their need to see that your program is getting results. Performance measurement is going to help you communicate achievements, hopefully in a way that's compelling for your funders and stakeholders that I just mentioned. Another reason why you should be measuring your performance is to determine if the change that you thought would occur. So thinking about your theory of change here, performance measurements will hopefully help you determine if that change that you anticipated is actually occurring after your intervention. And it's also, performance measurement is also a systematic way to collect reliable information about the intervention's implementation and progress toward outcomes. You can also use performance measurement data to spot and correct problems. For an example, it can answer questions like, are you reaching the population you intended? Do some people require more or less intensive service to show a positive outcome? Even when you're implementing your program exactly as you planned, performance measurement can help you find ways to strengthen the intervention and make it more effective. So think of performance measurement as a way to get feedback so you know your intervention is making that expected difference, and then help you decide how to make the most of your limited resources. Okay, now we'll talk about when you might use performance measurement. And you should think of it as more of a more than just checking something off, as a requirement that you have to do for your annual report. It is something that you should consider as an integral part of developing your program, as well as assessing it after implementation. Performance measurement can help you with planning for your program. It can help you managing your program throughout the year. An example here would be before your program year begins, performance measurement can help you clarify what specifically you hope to achieve at different times during your year. If you're planning to work with other sites, performance measurement can also help you decide what you will need from your partners in terms of achieving the outputs and outcomes that are a part of your performance measures. If you recruit and select sites, performance measurement can help you not only define your expectation for those sites, but it also gives you another way to assess which sites will best be able to implement your intervention and use your limited resources wisely. As you implement your program, performance measurement can serve as a point of conversation with staff, with AmeriCorps members, with your partner sites. It helps all as stakeholders to ensure mutual understanding, and you can reiterate why you're undertaking the effort that's involved in carrying out your intervention. And hopefully by centering that conversation on what your intervention aims to achieve, and that would be, in other words, the outcomes that I mentioned earlier. You can use performance measurement as you communicate with your partners and your sites to make sure that they're collecting the right data and staying on schedule. Performance measurement should identify what data to collect, how data are to be collected, and that would be specifically talking about data collection tools and methods, as well as benchmarks for success. And benchmarks is just another term for performance measures. And you all are likely aware that you have performance measures at the end of your application for funding. So this is another focal point as you communicate with your program partners and sites, always centering the conversation back to what your program's aiming to achieve. And then lastly, regular feedback from sites can also serve as an ongoing reality check for your performance measurement tools and data collection processes, and a way for you to refine those. For those of you with multi-site programs, some of your activities throughout the program year might involve site monitoring of your partners. And performance measurement is a great way to help you spot problems and address those issues through training and technical assistance so that your sites can be successful and collect the right information You can also use performance measurement data for making continuous program improvement. For example, by reviewing the data to see how different beneficiaries respond to your intervention. And you can compare data before and after any modifications to see what actually works best. Adjustments can help your program be more efficient and contribute to greater impact. In other words, a higher success rate for beneficiaries and outcomes that are more likely to be sustainable. Okay, we're going to get into some more learning exercises here, but lastly, the last points I wanted to share on how performance measurement can help your program management. It's going to make reporting to the commission, which is a requirement, much easier. I'll share the template that you should be using to complete progress reports on a biannual basis. Many of you have already done this. And then the results from those reports, hopefully you're able to use those to promote your program and maintain that buy-in from your local stakeholders to make the case for continued support or new resources when you're applying for continuation or recompeting for another grant cycle. Reaching and or surpassing your performance measure targets is a good reason to celebrate as well. So keep that in mind. It's a great way to build morale of your staff, as well as build morale of the AmeriCorps members that serve with your project, because it gives them, it can excite them when they're seeing and knowing that they're contributing to tangible results of the program. And you likely have your members on some sort of data collection tool and method, and that can be one of the least fun things of service. But then if there's a way to tie it back to the overall impact and help them see the big picture, that can certainly help boost the morale within your program. Okay, here's a quick one, and then we'll jump into AmeriCorps' national performance measures. But before that, performance measurement could be used for which of the following? Select all that apply. What are you seeing in the chat there, Eric?
Nothing yet. Give him a bit to digest the question here.
Okay, as they're doing that, I'm seeing that
Everything but D. A, B, C, and E. All.
yes, everything
All but
everything
D.
but D is
Everything but D.
the answer. Yeah, and as we're talking here, now I'm all of a sudden able. So for the next session, I'll be projecting these quizzes here. But let's see here. Let me just test this out. Yeah.
Most of the answers I'm getting is everything but D. So.
Okay, now we should be able to see polling. I'll close this pretty quickly.
Yep.
I just wanted to test it really quick.
Excellent. Yep. I see the polling up, Anthony. So.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay, performance measure could be used for which of the following? That would be sharing progress with stakeholders, making decisions about allocating resources, setting targets for progress in the coming year, and making the best case for funding. It's not necessarily going to help you to hire the best grant writers to assist with resource development, although that having good grant writers is certainly important. It's not necessarily relevant to performance measurement. So we talked about performance measurement in general. Now we'll talk about how AmeriCorps approaches performance measurement and what it hopes to achieve. AmeriCorps grantees contribute to the national service story by selecting outputs and outcomes for national performance measures. These are going to include both agency-wide priority measures and also complementary program measures. The agency-wide priority measures, those are listed in the AmeriCorps performance measure instructions document. Eric, if you're able to Google that and drop it in the chat, that would be helpful. That we do link to it in these slides, but as long as I'm talking about it, the 2024 AmeriCorps performance measure instructions document, that's going to list the standard agency-wide performance measures. But you're not limited to using just the AmeriCorps, the AmeriCorps created and listed performance measures in the performance measure instructions. You can also include a complementary program measure or more than one complementary program measure, which is customized to focus on your specific intervention if perhaps it doesn't align neatly with one of the national performance measures. But together, the standard agency-wide ones and then the customized complementary program measures, AmeriCorps aggregates all that data to tell a national service narrative. And of course, the agency-wide performance measures, as was already quizzed earlier, they're going to reflect AmeriCorps' programming priorities in the 6 key focus areas as reviewed: disaster services, economic opportunity, education, environmental stewardship, healthy futures, veterans and families, and then capacity building is considered a standalone because capacity building could be within all of these different focus areas. But the 6 key ones are the first ones listed, and then capacity building is also an option for measuring performance. National performance measures mean that everyone will use common terms, definitions, and approaches to measurement. And that makes it possible for AmeriCorps to combine data from all programs and projects with confidence. It's a way to ensure that all programs are speaking the same language when they're contributing data to that aggregation for AmeriCorps to tell the national service story. And each program is going to have specific performance measurement requirements, that depends on essentially what you've selected as your performance measure. And I've noticed that some program directors are involved in that process, which happens when an organization is applying for funding for identifying performance measures. Other times they're learning about it after they've been assigned the role of program director. So maybe there's some variance in terms of how familiar you are with your performance measures. I mentioned this earlier, but perhaps someone could put in the chat. I'll throw out a scenario here. I'm a new program director, and I'm not quite sure what my performance measures are. How could I find out what my program-specific performance measurement requirements are? Could someone help me out with that? Where would I go? Anything in the chat there, Eric?
No.
And I know,
Oh,
I know
grants.
there's folks on the call that definitely
grants.
know this. Yes, e-grants. Yes, if you're going to the commission reports on your performance measures on your behalf in e-grants. I'm not sure if you can see your performance. I think you can. Yeah, I mean it's associated with your application, so yes, you could.
Oh,
that's the answer that we're looking for. Is
hold on one second, Anthony.
Yeah.
Someone else mentioned e-grants, PM instructions, and previous reports. That's clever.
Yeah, those certainly.
Program contract, another one mentioned.
The probably the best place to go just straight off the bat is your application for federal assistance. And then I'm sure most or all of you have seen your AmeriCorps application for federal assistance, but you're going to find your performance measures in the performance measures section, and you'll see, in this case, this is a former program of ours. They had some customized complementary performance measures around, well, here we have number of individuals served, number of individuals with improved job readiness. That is a national performance measure. Also, number of individuals who secure employment. But I believe this program had I guess they all were national performance measures. But one of the reasons I want to show you this example is these are a lot of performance measures. And just from a practical standpoint, you might want to consider, because to meet the requirement, AmeriCorps requirement for performance measurement, you only need to have one aligned performance measure. And when I say aligned performance measure, that's an output and an outcome that match one another. And you'll see those in the performance measure instructions linked here. Just to make life easier, I know you all already have approved applications for federal funding, so your performance measures are set now. But if you come up for recompete and you want to make life easier, consider measuring one performance measure or collecting data towards one performance measure and reporting on one. You can certainly track however many you think are going to be helpful to communicate the success of your program, or all the other reasons I mentioned previously. We don't want to say limit yourself in terms of performance measurement, but to satisfy the requirement for reporting, you could track several sets outside of your application and then just have the one performance measure where, and that way you could actually really hone in on the way your data collection system and making sure that you're collecting quality data across your sites. It just makes it a lot easier if you're just focused on one performance measure. But
And
that is
just
to your discretion. Yeah.
as a reminder, Anthony, those we dropped the link for those performance measure instructions in the chat, and they are the same. I just double checked; they are the same as what's in the PowerPoint. And this PowerPoint we're going to be releasing, it will be a PDF of it, so you'll be able to click on that as well. So lots of opportunities to get that link.
Thanks, Eric. All right, so some other benefits of using national performance measures, and this is in addition to the best practice of collecting and reporting quality data on one measure instead of having multiple. You might want to consider using AmeriCorps' national performance measures. It helps AmeriCorps, it helps the commission to provide data that are that correspond to the same, that it uses the same language across performance measures. So the data tends to be higher quality, and if similar interventions are occurring across multiple programs, it's easier to demonstrate the power of national service. And it also helps to ensure that the guidance for the national performance measures is correct, and it can also include definitions for the intervention, for the target population, for output and outcome, as well as information on collecting data and calculating the measure. So we'll look at some examples of national performance measures. And yeah, like I was saying previously, it helps because everyone's using the same terms, definitions, and approaches to measurement, and it makes it possible for the agency to combine data from programs and projects with confidence. And we're all speaking the same language when we're using the AmeriCorps performance measures, the national performance measures. So here's an example. AmeriCorps members provide training on nutrition designed for families on a low budget. This includes healthy meal preparation, stretching the grocery budget, and using local resources such as community gardens. They also provide counseling and referrals to other nutrition programs. The output is the number of individuals who receive services, in this case, training on nutrition and referrals to alleviate long-term hunger. And the program tracks and reports on the number of individuals served. So that is the output. The outcome or the result of the intervention, that occurs when the individuals served report increased food security for themselves and their family, and this represents a positive change in the family's circumstances, which you might remember from the beginning of the presentation. That would be an outcome that deals with a change in condition. And again, that's often considered the most compelling type of outcome. Here's another example. AmeriCorps members pilot new volunteer management practices to support volunteer mentors at a youth organization. Some of the intervention activities include training mentors with a new curriculum, meeting with them one-on-one to address any issues that come up, organizing periodic social events for mentors and youth to enhance camaraderie. The output in this example is the number of organizations that AmeriCorps members provide capacity building services to in their community. And the program is going to track and report on the number of organizations that received the training and participated in meeting and social events. And then the result or the outcome is the number of organizations that report an increase in their effectiveness, efficiency, and or program scale or reach after receiving capacity building services. And this outcome represents a positive change in the condition of the administration at the organization. All right, learning exercise number 6. Go ahead and read that while I work on getting the poll up for this. Okay, here we go. I think I see you reading there, Eric, but you were on mute, but
I'm sorry.
it's all good.
I'm so sure of myself too.
I think
Go ahead
folks
and
were able to read it off the slide there. It's also should be now posted. Oh, I have to hit open poll. I always forget that. So here it is. What's the best output? Project A serves economically disadvantaged young adults to find a place to live while they seek employment. Which of the following performance measure outputs would be the best choice for the project? And almost all of you have said number of economically disadvantaged individuals, including homeless individuals receiving housing services. That is the correct answer. Very good. All right. Go ahead and read that while I get this next poll up. Okay, this is an example of an outcome focused on education. Can you identify the best outcome? Project B provides homework help and tutors K through 6 students one-on-one in mathematics. Which of the following performance measure outcomes would be the best choice for the project? All right, I only had that up there for 30 seconds because we want to keep things moving, but I saw most that were able to respond said C, and that is the number of students with improved academic performance in literacy and or math, and that's going to represent a change in knowledge or skills. All right. So here's the summary of the key points covered in this section. Outputs, those reflect the amount of service provided, and that could be the number of people served, the products or programs created. And outcomes are changes that occur for individuals and communities, organizations, or the environment. And outcomes could represent a change in attitudes or beliefs, knowledge or skills, behavior, or condition. Another key takeaway as you consider a new program year is that performance measurement is integral to the management of your AmeriCorps program. For example, in the area of strategy and planning, also for site recruitment and selection, for program or project implementation, and also reporting to the commission as well as to your stakeholders. National performance measures reflect priorities and focus areas of AmeriCorps. We've covered this a few times now. Those are the 6 key areas along with capacity building. National performance measures strengthen the national service story because it enables AmeriCorps to combine results from across the country. That way that they're comparing apples and apples, and national performance measures are uniform. So grantees and sponsors are required to collect data using the same approach when they're using the national performance measures. And again, you're going to find those in the AmeriCorps State National Performance Measure Instructions. Also, to see how it's worded as far as performance measurement requirements, you can see how that's worded in the AmeriCorps Notice of Funding Opportunity instructions. It's actually pretty brief, the reference. It points back to the National Performance Measure Instructions, but just know that it's also referenced in the NOFO as well. So now getting into how this all ties into meeting the requirement of progress reporting to the commission, who in turn aggregates data to report to AmeriCorps. So our reporting schedule is set up on a biannual basis. We are now getting into a new program year 2024, which goes into calendar year 2025. Of course, there's a variety of start dates for you all. Some have started in August, some started at the beginning of this month. Your reporting period is going to align with your program start date. So that's going to look different across all of our programs depending on when your actual start date is. But the reporting period is the same across all programs. So the end of the first reporting period is going to be the end of February. And then you have 30 days after the reporting period ends to then submit your report to the commission. So that'll give you some time to aggregate your data, clean your data, make sure that it's in shape to report to the commission. And you'll submit your report through SurveyMonkey, and I'll pull up an example here just so you can know what to look out for. And then I'll also briefly point you to some ways to pull data for that report. For the end year report, that's going to be your program start until the end of September. So actually for program year 2023, for those of you that were operating in program year 2023, the reporting period ends at the end of September. So keep that in mind, and then you'll get the SurveyMonkey link after the reporting period closes, and you will have until the end of October to report your end year results. And then we have a final period, and this is a way to capture any data that is collected after that end year reporting period. So we'll ask you to report everything from October to the end of your program year in the cases that it's applicable. Some of you all, particularly those of you with education programs, are ending in the summer, so this might not apply. For those of you that are continuing programmatic activities past the end of the end year reporting period, you'll have a chance to report those results in that final report. And again, the link always goes out right at the close of the reporting period. And let's take a look at how SurveyMonkey report looks. Actually, let's take you to an example from our friends at Utica, a former program. So this is an example of a template. It's kind of difficult to show it in SurveyMonkey because then you have to actually fill out the fields to allow you to advance. Or I can show you the design survey view, but that I don't think gives a good look at it. This is and this brings me to another point. We can create a template, a PDF template for your SurveyMonkey. So you don't have to necessarily complete it all within SurveyMonkey. You can do it offline in PDF form. You have your standard contact fields. This is from Program Year 2022. I think we actually simplified some of these fields where you're not reporting on quite as many things. Every year we're looking to refine it to make it as streamlined as possible, to make your job easier for reporting. But you will indicate, as I mentioned previously, the reporting period that you're reporting on. Enrollment and retention. This is not considered a performance measure so much as an indicator of your program's health. Is something that would be flagged if you have low enrollment and retention, just as something to potentially get follow-up technical assistance on. And I know that's a ongoing bugaboo is recruitment, but that is something that we have to report to AmeriCorps. So we ask you to report it in the mid and end year and final reports. And then you have the narrative field that you will provide any follow-up information if you're off target on recruitment and retention. Then we get into the performance measures. As it looks in SurveyMonkey, works on page logic. So when you select you identify which program you're reporting on, it'll take you to your performance measures within SurveyMonkey, and they will be reflected exactly as I showed earlier. At the end of your application for funding. So that's how we design the SurveyMonkey. Is we go into all of your applications and we transfer your performance measures to the SurveyMonkey so that you're reporting on the performance measures that you and your organization indicated in your application for funding. And let me just make sure all the pertinent things are covered here. Yeah, so the example of this program, and I'm sure our friend John would be fine with us sharing on this. They just had a lot of performance measures to report on, and then it's, I think, more challenging when you're having your members engage in data collection on a variety of different performance measures. There's increased margin for error. So again, to make it easier, you can just do one aligned performance measure. But if you have the capacity, there's no reason why you can't track performance measures on a variety of outputs and outcomes. So then there's some narrative fields on successes and challenges. We give you a chance to communicate your technical assistance needs and requests. Some great stories. AmeriCorps loves these positive narrative stories that go beyond just the quantitative information of your performance measures. So we give you a chance to provide that. Then we get into the final section is performance data elements. That's how it's labeled within eGrants when we're reporting to AmeriCorps. A lot of just, I guess you could say, random additional metrics that they're looking for, from the number of individuals that applied to the the dollar amount of resources leveraged by your program, and a whole host of other indicators. And if they're not applicable to your program, you can simply put in a 0. So that's another point to keep in mind, because it's SurveyMonkey, you can't just put in not applicable because we have to be able to aggregate it. So if it doesn't apply, you just put in a 0. AmeriCorps does want us to also report on the demographics of the nationwide AmeriCorps cohort. So we'll ask you demographic information. That's the final section of the progress report. And you can pull some of this from eGrants, and that's the final part of this first session. I already covered all these things to consider as I was talking. One other thing to keep in mind, because I get this question often, I'm the one that's sending out the links for the SurveyMonkey, and I'll often get a response that says, please send me my report. I just submitted it. It won't be considered approved until your program administrator has a chance to review it, just to make sure that you've reported on everything that we need for our progress report to AmeriCorps. And if you're not providing clarification on items that require it, your PA might ask you to clarify as well. But once any of those clarifications, if you have any, are addressed, then we'll download your final report from SurveyMonkey and send it over. That'll come from your PA, and you can have that for your records. Another frequently asked question is, if you haven't enrolled all of your members, but you expect to, your program model, could be such that when you come to the end of a reporting period, your recruitment cycle is in process and you expect to have a much higher percentage than what you're able to report. All you're going to do is just clarify that. That's what the narrative fields are for. So it's no worries if you're under 100 or well below it, if your program model doesn't lend itself at that particular time to have a full cohort. Okay, so for finding some of the data points in eGrants, I remember receiving a question once like, where do I find data for this to report to you all? For your performance measured, you should know that that has to be happening within your program administration. We're not going to be able to obviously have performance measured data for you all to report. That's something that's part of program management, but there are ways to get some of the performance data elements and demographic information, also enrollment and retention. I won't talk through the blow by blow here, just know that they're in the slides. And I think a lot of you are already familiar with pulling reports, but that's essentially what you're doing. Is you're going into the SNN state national reports field within eGrants, finding enrollment rate report. You'll put in your program code. That's going to be at the top of your application, and then you'll download the report. It'll go into your folder. You open the report. It'll go into your downloads folder. When you open the report, you'll find your enrollment rate. Same goes for retention. You would just go through that same process and repeat the process for retention rate. Here's an example for pulling demographic information. You might already have a way of tracking this in internal systems. But if you wanted to pull it from eGrants, you would just simply search for the application, the submitted application that should be accessible after selection. You should be able to go in for each of your members to their submitted applications, and then from their eGrants application or the My AmeriCorps portal is where they submit their applications. You can find age, education, all of I think most of the demographic information that we require, that AmeriCorps requires us to report on. Well, I should note though that with demographic information, I think there is an option for members not to report on their demographic information. So in that case, you just report on what you have data for, really. We're not going to scrutinize it from member to member across our portfolio of programs. Okay, you know how to reach us if you have questions. But if questions come to mind later, you know how to reach us. But if you have questions now, I'd be happy to try to answer those before we get into the next session.
So in the chat, Tony asks, our program was supposed to start in September according to our application, but our host sites are seeing challenges in recruitment. Is there anything we need to do officially with the commission to start later, say in October? That's a good question.
Sorry. So, and another PA can feel free to jump in on this one. I would say, you know, you're as it relates to reporting on your performance measure, you'll simply report on, you know, when you're actually achieving, when you're able to collect data towards your outputs and your outcomes, whether that starts in September or October. You know, with the SurveyMonkey and the PDF template, it doesn't go into that level of detail. Like, you know, what were the dates that these performance measures were on which you collected data for these performance measures. That would be my suggestion there is just make sure whatever data you're collecting and reporting is actually backed up with your data collection tools, regardless of when you start collecting that data. Would anyone add anything to that?
I might jump in and just say that even if your services don't start until October, the contract start date is your effective start
point.
date, or the grant start date. So you're technically, your program, if you have a September 1st start date, your program has started. So you can start to accrue expenses. Your staff time can be, you know, if you have that in your budget, that can be reimbursed, et cetera. So even if your members don't actually start providing services till October, your program year has begun as of the effective start date of your grant/contract. So you wouldn't have to do anything official with us per se. So it's not like you have to amend your contract or anything.
Great question. Does anyone else have any other questions for Anthony? Or anyone else? Oh. Welcome, Tony.